any other citizen to go through. I was imprisoned. I was poisoned. It is not nice. We're talking about nation building. We may differ personally. Okay?
You were imprisoned and not poisoned.
I was both.
You don't need to alarm the situation.
I was poisoned.
To be realistic, President.
I have scars of that poison.
Right.
Okay? And that's why many times you see me wearing sandals. I can't wear shoes for a very long time. Okay? This is not my weight. Okay? I have suffered during the... But notwithstanding that, it was a phase in life. It was a learning curve. But how do I feel now? I feel there's a breath of fresh air. And the new Dawn administration, politically, mark my words, politically, they seem to be delivering. But we must not lose sight of the ball. The issue here is that even when PF came into government, they spoke of good things. They allowed even the opposition on ZNBC, okay? But what did we see when we lost sight of the ball? Is that dictatorship came in, pangas were everywhere, whoever spoke against government was locked up, okay? But for some of us, regardless of whether the situation is good or bad, weather or seasons, for some of us, we love this country. We love our freedoms. We love our liberties. And every morning when I wake up, every morning, I hope to live for those liberties, for those freedoms. But if need be, I'm prepared to die for those freedoms to be enshrined. So that never, never again should any of my children, their children's children, experience what I've gone through. For me, this fight is not about me becoming president, but president of Zambia. This fight is about making sure that these freedoms, these liberties, should be a normal thing in this country. That is the way I feel now.
Right. Let me also unveil Mr. Mukandila here. I'm glad that you are sitting besides, one strong opposition leader, Mr. Fresha Siwale. And you were in government just yesterday, in which you didn't stay long. 10 years, you were booted out of government by the people of Zambia, looking at the numerous mistakes that you made. I call them numerous mistakes because you have admitted, as well as some of your leaders have come out confessing some of those mistakes that you made. From his submissions, what are some of the areas would you agree with in terms of what he has just brought out?
Well, of course, his opinions, to begin with, have to be respected, as any other person's opinions have to be respected. Of course, he feels he may have been treated unfairly, which is according to him. And we believe the law is meant for each and every one of us. And Lady Justice is actually blind. Regardless of political party, regardless of the creed, sex, or race, the law is very blind. And, well, he may have fallen on the wrong side of the law once or twice. And it may have been applied, whether it was arbitrarily applied or not, that is for him to decide as a Zambian citizen. Of course, he has to be respected in terms of his human rights. And we believe human rights have to be respected across the board. Having said that, we also believe that we may have fallen short of the glory of the Zambian people. And if you heard today, the former Republican president, Dr. Edgar Chagwa actually apologized to the nation. And that is the core that we've all followed suit to say, yes, we may have missed one or two things. We offended the Zambian people, and that is the reason why they decided to put us out.
Yeah.
And we believe, as human beings, to err is human, and to forgive is divine. And having said that, we believe we moved in a certain trajectory that the Zambian people did not appreciate. And of course, we've learned from our mistakes. Having made mistakes, we've gotten back to the drawing board, and it is time to start identifying certain trends that are similar to what we were doing in the New Dawn government, in the New Dawn administration. And surprisingly, we've seen trends that are very similar, and we would want to remind our colleagues every time to say, this is what made us get booted out of power. And
what are those trends? Maybe you can just bring out those issues. I think it's important.
Well, for example, we had a Republican president who made a statement to say we are going to clean the system. We are going to fight corruption. Now, a statement which is made to say we shall ensure that we recover national assets. He may not have realized that that particular statement made the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Drug Enforcement Commission, and the police become very excited in wanting to achieve certain results that may not even be there. So in the end, we have now seen some sections of investigative wings becoming overzealous and arbitrarily applying the law in a manner which is going to cost the government. And exactly that is what we may have done, where a Republican president will make a statement which he may not realize that that statement actually amounts to an instruction which may not be followed accordingly, you know. And these people lose the integrity of these state institutions. Now, we believed that such instructions crippled the integrity of state institutions.
Right.
And because of that, we are seeing a repetition of that particular trend, where an instruction coming from the Republican president is almost being abused by state institutions. And in the end, the integrity of these state institutions is lowered. In the end, we find that democratic dispensation that we've been enjoying, state institutions are losing the credibility because they are trying to follow instructions to appease their master. And, well, I may be hastened to state that the state risks losing a lot of money because of arbitral prosecutions, which I term as persecutions. In the end, I should actually say there's going to be a lot of witch hunting, and they need to be very careful. Do your investigations and execute when it is necessary, and not where you make public events which don't need to be made public. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. President Siwale, I know that you would want to respond on a few things, but for the sake of not diluting the purpose of this interview on the national budget, I think we are going to ignore that aspect. I know later on possibly we are going to fuse in a few questions as we come to talk about protecting public resources and the fight against corruption. But for now, let's begin on this note, President Siwale. What does tomorrow's day mean for the New Dawn administration with regards to the national budget?
You know, actually, I fear for tomorrow's budget. in that, first and foremost, the new donor administration has lost the plot. Because the first thing, if I was president, the first thing I should have done was to move the budget cycle to either March or June. Okay, in order, for the new administration to do surgery on the PF budget, because what basically they are presenting tomorrow is a PF budget.
You think so?
It is, because it's PF that collected all the data. They're the ones who prepared it. So even if they've done a little surgery there, the time is too short for them to do, good work. Okay? So they needed a lot of time. And, the moving of the budget cycle would have allowed for them to do a good job. Okay? And in between here, they should have asked for a supplementary budget, because, what is subsisting is a PF budget. So all they needed to do was just ask for a supplementary budget and continue running up to the time they're going to do the budget. Now, a cardinal in the budget preparation, what they needed to do was first to look at, the budget itself, to analyze it from 1964. Okay? Because from 1964 to the last one, which was presented in 2020, we've had nanny budgets, being presented to the Zambian people. Because those supposed budgets that are presented, they do not represent the true status of the Zambian economy. There is no relation, there is no correlation between the budget and the economy. They fail to clearly demonstrate the resource base from which they are going to grow the GDP. The export receipts, if you're able to look at the budgets that have been presented, the export receipts, the local expenditure in the economy and projected investment, they're not clearly demonstrated in the budget. And it's like it's magic, they arrive at GDP. And when they arrive at that GDP, then they tax it, on average of about 30%. Like last budget is about 34% that, they're taxing that production. Now, as long as you are not able to demonstrate, the resource base, then you are lying to yourselves. You can't present a budget without the resource base. And why do I say that the resource base is not established, properly, clearly defined?
Right.
First and foremost, when you go to Bank of Zambia statistics will show you that Zambia exports, export receipts are in excess of $10 billion annually.
Yeah.
Okay? Local expenditure, which is basically the budget itself, the previous budget. Okay? Because that's money being spent in the economy. Then, projected investment is when you do your house plan. Your house plan, the factory plan, okay? You do those plans and present to the councils. That is projected investment, throughout the year. Now, councils are moribund throughout the country. All local authorities are moribund. So, that data does not end up, into the budget. So how do they arrive at local projected investment?
Right.
Okay? So the only thing that we remain with out of the three, because we lose 66% of the resource base, the only thing that we remain with tangible and which can be accounted for is the export receipt.
Right.
Now, if the export receipt, according to Bank of Zambia statistics, is over $10 billion, what is the GDP? What is the production on that export receipt? You multiply it by 10.
Right.
So we're supposed to have a GDP from export receipts in excess of $100 billion. Now, if you are taxing, GDP at the rate of 34%, we're supposed to collect about $34 billion from just export receipts. That's supposed to be the revenue to government. Now, why is it that our budget averages around $6 billion? How do we lose this other amount? And that's the more reason why, from my previous conversations with you and other, media houses, I've always called for the budget reform process. That let's begin the budget reform process, okay? And if we go back in history, we may find that the International Monetary Fund, IMF, at the end of the hippie completion point in 2006, wrote a letter to the Zambian government advising the government of Zambia to embark on this budget reform process. And it has taken 15 years. And just a few weeks back, I engaged 2 former finance ministers in the past 2 weeks as to the status of that letter. Does it exist? One told me, yes, I processed that letter. I received it from IMF. So why didn't you act upon that letter? He says, it's the knowledge, the understanding, and the skill that was lacking. That is why. The second one that I consulted with, he simply told me he never saw the letter. And he simply, cast it aside and simply said, look, there's no country in Africa that can develop without donor input. We all depend on donors. So, for this former finance minister, his mind is cast in steel that we cannot develop from our own resources.
Right.
Now, where is our problem in the budgeting process? The first problem happened in 1964, on midnight, 23rd October 1964, when the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia, independent Republic of Zambia, was unveiled on midnight, 23rd October. In the budget, in the Constitution, also was the first budget for the Republic of Zambia. It's not the Kenneth Kaunda Group that formulated the first budget for the Republic of Zambia. Now, if the British formulated that budget, what were the statistics that they used in arriving at that budget? The statistics were based on the settler community. So when they left, the politicians, the new politicians in independent Zambia, quickly became the settler community. And that's why you see up to today, because you're still using the same template of 1964, you find that they budget for emoluments for the politicians, the allowances, the entertainment. Okay? When we say we want funds for education, we say go to the donors. Medicine in hospitals, look for the donors. Road infrastructure, let's go and borrow. Okay. So, we need to arrive at a point where we say, let us review our last 56, 57 years.
Right.
So that we now invert the corn. We load all our problems, all our development challenges into the corn.
I'll allow you to take a little bit maybe of a breather. Let me engage in again, Mr. Mukandila Celestin. I think some of the areas that President Siwale has talked about for me, very catching note actually, there's the issue of budget recycle, very important, because he did mention that the UPND is new in government, and yet the budget that we expect tomorrow, we should not be excited as a country because they have not done much, data correction and the likes, And my question is, I don't know if you agree with him or not, okay? But if you're going to agree with him, my question again to you would be, and as well as to President Siwale here, would be, what happens to politicians or opposition leaders, when they are in the opposition, when they are vying to form governments, don't you maybe prepare a template of a budget in case tomorrow I win? In case of a miracle happens, I'm going to start from here. I ask this question because budget recycles, I think we've seen this for a long time, even under the previous regime. You know, a budget maybe which was supposed to be presented maybe on maybe 15th of October, sometimes you could get it even in November. You know, do you agree with him?
Well, I feel he's actually very right with regards to the recycling process of the budget, and it is very sad, of course. Having seen that, of course, we've got a new Dawn government, which, according to a lot of sections of the society, feel they may not have been ready to run the affairs of the nation. Why do we say so? Because, well, they had less time to even collect data, like President Siwale said. The data collection in any process of forming a credible budget is very important. And having seen that...
Why not do that before you form government? That's where my question is.
Exactly.
Mr. Celestin, as well as President Siwale here.
Exactly. So that is the reason... That is the reason I'm saying the new Dawn government may not have been ready to run the affairs of the government. However, we are expectant of their maiden budget to be something different from the usual recycled budgets that we've had. Well, the Zambian people expect that the budget will provide a roadmap on job creation for the youths, women, and the marketeers out there. Because as it stands, the new Dawn government has actually sent in a perception to say you can only be in employment and credible employment if you are a holder of a diploma, or if you've had an opportunity to access education. And it is a challenge on them, actually. We've seen people have already started complaining.
That information actually is not there. I don't know where you are getting that, that
information
of diploma,
yes,
degree, those things.
We actually have, well, people have been complaining within the circles of the UPND to say, I mean, you should have told us that for us to campaign, we needed to have IFI papers. IFI paper, what is that supposed to mean?
Those
whatever the case,
Mr.
Yes. They are not actually stories. These are factual things. I've got an uncle in a northern province who is a staunch UPND supporter. He even used to tell me to say, Mumkalusa, because if we will be given credible jobs, and now he's the one telling me to say, you may have been right, my son. But whatever the case, story for another day. The Zambian people expect that the UPND new Dawn first budget will provide a roadmap for social cash transfer and how refined the social cash transfer is going to be, because the elderly people, the underprivileged people are waiting for that. The Zambian people are expecting that the UPND New Dawn government will provide a roadmap in their budget on how best to create a conducive environment for small, medium enterprises. Of course, we've got an introduction of a new ministry. So the Zambian people are expecting a roadmap on how the new Dawn government is going to provide proper and a good, credible education to the youths, the women, and the citizenry as a whole. The Zambian people are expecting that tomorrow's budget will provide for how best a young girl in grade 4 or 5 or whatever grade, in tertiary school or whatever grade, is going to access sanitary wear, sanitary pads at a very cheap price, because probably the government will have removed the import tax on sanitary wear. And that is very crucial, because many are the times when these young girls have been, for me, I actually call it discriminated against by the imposition of taxes on sanitary pads, which are very extremely expensive, causing the small girl to not go to school. I'm a keen supporter of movements that try and ensure that a young girl should go to school. The Zambian people are expecting the budget presentation to provide for how best the fiscal balance is going to be. The Zambian people are expecting the budget to have a base on what we expect in terms of, one, the pay as you earn. Are we going to have another elevation of the fees or the figures, or is it going to be reduced? So ideally, the Zambian employer and employee also are expecting more from the government in the new budget.
What are we likely to see going forward, Mr. Mukandila, following the concerns that people have been demanding for free education, and you heard the response coming from the president as well as the government in general, that I think there's no way you can demand for a free education now, because the budget that we have is not ours, it's for the PF. Do we see maybe that question being addressed in this budget, which will be presented tomorrow?
Well, you see, one wise man once said that do not promise what you cannot achieve. And it is actually a litmus test on the New Dawn administration government. And I would want the Zambian people to open their eyes and ears and see to it that promises that were promised should be fulfilled. If you cannot fulfill a promise, do not promise. Because the only thing that will be seen is that you are a liar, and a liar shall be called by name to say you are a liar. Tomorrow, as of tomorrow, we shall have a UPND budget. The president had given us a checklist to start ticking from. Which checklist? We shall start ticking from, starting from tomorrow. The first 100 days of the UPND, we shall look at the checklist and say, you told us that you were using a PF budget and therefore you cannot do anything. What have you achieved from your promises? People want free education. The Zambian people are expecting free education. Is it coming? And if the answer is in the affirmative, well, we'll be waiting for that. Because they're going to have a budget tomorrow. And it is, for me, I actually feel it is the most anticipated budget. I even fear for them, like Mr. President stated here. I fear for them. They may have overpromised, and unfortunately, government is not run like a business in the private sector. Things cannot be done overnight. The president gave us a historic background of our budget presentations. And simply put, there is need for that reformation in the process of coming up with a budget.
Right.
Now, can you come up with a proper, sustainable budget within 2 months of running government? Or the answer lies on tomorrow's budget presentation. We hope it shall be delivered according to the expectation of the Zambian people.
Right.
And we shall be here to look at the checklist together with the Zambian people. And we are going to ensure that we exercise our democratic right to criticize, because we've been told by the president to say we've got the right to criticize. And of course our criticisms shall be very, very rational. We are not going to give mere political rhetorics or petty criticisms. No. We shall stick to the code of good governance and criticize rightly.
Right. President Siwale, I want you also to spend 3 minutes. The PF is promising to give credible checks and balances. And now, one thing I love about you, you are a very good historian, you know, and then again, you are a politician. Some people feel that politicians most of the time, or some of them, are liars. From his donation, it appears is alleging that the UPND overpromised. And one of the promises here is the free education policy. As we tackle the education sector, remember we had 2 ministries which have now been, realigned again together. How do you look at the free education policy? Can the budget we will have tomorrow address these concerns besides the amendments that have been made so far in the statement coming from the president, that is not a free education for all, but it's going to be a free education to the vulnerable children?
You see, when you promise what I believe in,
yeah,
and that's why maybe people say I'm troublesome. I like to face facts. Okay? When you promise, keep your promise. The issue as to whether tomorrow's budget will meet people's expectations is another issue. The issue that we must address is that we promised, when we in the opposition, we promised free education. Now, what is free education? See, many people don't understand when they say free education.
Yeah.
It's basically, you are saying, how do I put it? You see, there is a principle in economics, which is known as sacrificing a generation. Okay?
Yeah.
You are invoking the principle of sacrificing a generation. Now, when you are invoking that principle, you are drawing a line in the sand that you innocent and your generation, regardless of how much I spend on you, I'll never get an international standard teacher, doctor, scientist. Okay? Now, because of this new dawn, I intend to create a new citizen.
Right.
Okay? Now, this new citizen, from the one that they are born, they must not know hunger, they must not know nakedness, they must not know trauma, they must have their brains stimulated in readiness for knowledge assimilation. It's not a question of simply saying, go to that class and go and learn. No, you must have a plan. And it's a mid-term plan. It's a 25-year plan. Okay? You are saying the baby that is born today, in the next 25 years, that they're going to become professors, doctors, scientists. But they must not know the corruption that we find ourselves in. You and I and him were so weak in that we never ate, we walked naked, we wore salaula, and things like that. Now, as you are saying, we want to provide this free education. Think broadly. We must start thinking broadly. That, yes, you and I, we need to support you so that you don't die. Up to the time, you're going to leave this earth, there must be support to you. But you are like, maize in a field that has already tasseled. Why should I put fertilizer? Okay? I'll keep watering the maize. Whatever I'll get out of there, that will be sufficient.
Right.
But this fertilizer, I reserve it for the new crop because I'll manage it from the one when I plant. Okay? That is what I know of when you say free education. You intend to invoke the principle of sacrificing a generation.
All right.
Now, and that's the reason why I'm insisting that we need to reform the budget. Because after budget reformation, we're going to have enough resources, to invest in our citizens. Because every nation on earth has only 2 sets of resources. The first one is the population, the citizen.
Yeah.
The second one is the land. When you talk about copper, gold, they are not national resources, they are only strategic resources. the use of these strategic resources is dependent on the population activity. And this population activity, if well harnessed, will create so much energy in the economy, so much that we can modernize this economy. We can have food for everybody. We can have decent housing for everybody. Look at countries that do not have copper, gold, emeralds. You know, the Scandinavian countries, they have only forests. Look at their standard of life. It's because it's the investment in their citizens, human capital development. Okay? Let's you know, a quick example I can give you. Let's look at our national team, national football team. Why are they failing to play football? Why are they losing everywhere they're going? You look at those players, their mental strength. They don't have mental strength. They're so weak. Okay? They may have the skill, but their childhood was so bad. There was no investment in them so that their, you know, their brain development takes place. They have stunted brains. And hence, they cannot perform. They don't have the power because the power is in the brain. That strength is in the brain.
Right.
Okay? Now, national strength is not in big bodies.
Right.
It's in the brain. Look at the Chinese. They're small people, but they've got brain power. The Japanese are small people. They've got the brain power. Now, that is what we need to invest in this new Dawn administration. We need to invoke that principle of sacrificing a generation.
How long is that going to take, President Siwale? And furthermore, I think you pointed out the fact that we need budget reformation because you believe that if we are going to reform our budgeting processes, that what will translate into having more money, which somebody is going to argue with you. Say, how can budget reformation bring about more money?
Okay.
You know, because remember that the budget we're talking about right now is not the money that is available. You know, this is just a money on paper, the projections. You know, and yet we've been told that in Zambia we have no money. As we speak right now, our coffers are empty at the same time.
President, listen to this. You see, when the British were living, they accounted for their population here. So when the independent leaders came into office, they were excited with the independence and carried on with the statistics of those who had left. They did not include their citizens because you see, you can't say takukira mnyumba ya nyuwani. Those who were staying here were 4. Imwe na bana banu, you are 16 with the nephews, you know, we are extended family system. Then you are saying, we will rely on a budget of those 4 people who left. How are you going to account for the other 12? Okay? Now, this is the dilemma that we find ourselves in. One thing everyone must know, national building is basically house building. When you are constructing a house, you ask for a bill of quantities. Okay? How much will this plan of a house cost? Then when you are presented with a bill of quantities, you are now saying, okay, what are the immediate things that we need to do? Okay, apa, tufuno kumba foundation. We need to, you know, to build the box. We need to do the slab. So you now begin to segment your development. Are you with me?
Yeah, sure.
It's not that you have all the money at the same time.
Right.
You are, you know, because of, you know, the cost of the house, you now segment the immediate, short term, mid term, and long term.
Right.
Now, even in national building, we must do the same thing. Government must have a plan for short term. In government, short term is 5 years.
Right.
Mid term is 25 years. Long term is 250 years. Okay? Now, once we are able to cost our national development agenda and segment it, is going to trigger two instruments, which every government on earth in the developed world, they use. Okay? Deficit financing for consumption. Productive inflation for infrastructure development. Now, these two instruments allow government to borrow money from unborn children. Are you with me? You borrow money from the unborn children to do all the infrastructure so that when they are born, they find a house to live in, they find a school, they find a road. And the lifespan of that infrastructure, a road, for example, is 100 years. Here, because you're borrowing from China, you're doing a road lifespan 2 years. Okay? Because you're doing things for yourselves. Now, mind you, even when you borrow money from China, do you know that you're borrowing from unborn Chinese children? Encumbering unborn Zambian children. I'll give you an example, a quick example. Where is Michael Sata who borrowed the Eurobond? Where is he?
He's gone.
He's gone. Who is going to pay? Some were not even born when the Eurobond was contracted. Yeah. So let us refocus as a nation.
Right.
Let us not, this quick fix. We've failed over 56 years. This quick fix. Let us now think outside the box.
Right. Gentlemen, we are going to be spending 2 minutes now, each speaker moving forward, because what are other areas that needs your attention as well, and your input for the sake of the people out there. And now you need also to realize that in tomorrow's budget, I think we also need a component or how much money is going to be allocated to the Ministry of Health. We are living in the COVID-19 situation, and meaning that more money is needed to be given to the Ministry of Health. Reason being that we need to employ possibly more health workers in there, as well as doctors. We did lose a lot of doctors during the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to hear from Mr. Mukandila within 2 minutes. Really, how different will this budget going to be from the previous one? Because remember that the previous budget, I think, didn't have much component talking about the COVID-19, addressing the whole situation. It came in the midst. Do you think there's hope at the end of the tunnel? Or there's too much now pressure again on the President Hakainde Hichilema going forward?
Well, the pressure will be there, and it is still coming, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Well, I believe with regards to the COVID-19 fight, and looking at the provisions of the budget, we had an opportunity of providing for a supplementary budget to try and cushion the previous COVID fight. And of course, when you look at the fight that the then Minister of Health had put up with regards to the COVID, it was something which was out of this world. Zambia was considered as a model in the fight against COVID. And other countries started even looking at what we did. Honorable Chitalu Chilufya did an extraordinary job. Of course, we expect that an allocation should be placed, considering that the COVID is not something that we can play with. We need more vaccinations. So far, our target has been that we should be able to vaccinate about 70% of the population. Unfortunately, we've not even reached we've not even reached 3%, which is very unfortunate. But all eggs in the basket, we believe this budget should be able to provide an insight with regards to the allocation, employment of health personnel, and those who were attached to be engaged, actually, because we believe during the COVID fight that we had, at least for the first time in the history of Zambia, Zambia employed over 250, in fact over 400 health workers, It was unprecedented, but that was meant to ensure that we handle the fight against COVID with an iron fist. Of course, the Zambian people are very expectant to see a proper budgetary allocation to the Ministry of Health to ensure that not only COVID, because you see, in as much as we may have COVID, we've got malaria on the other end, we've got HIV and AIDS on the other end. We've done so well in the past with regards to attaining the universal health coverage in the previous government, and all thanks to the previous government and the efforts of a professional who was handling that particular ministry, Dr. Chitalu Chirufi, whose main aim, we believe, and we actually saw, was to save lives. And, well, the Zambian people are expectant.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's hear from President Precious Siwale. You've gotten the submission from Mr. Mukandila. How much, expectations do you have with regards to this sector, very sensitive sector? And your brother there did mention that Honorable Chitalu Chirufi and the PF in general, they did their part and a lot of sacrifice to ensure that the people of Zambia are saved.
I would not want to personalize
the discussion.
This discussion,
Right.
Mentioning names and things like that. One thing I would want to make clear, since you say Zambia is a Christian nation, in the book of Hosea, the Bible says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge and wisdom." And we are perishing as a nation because we lack knowledge and wisdom.
Right.
First and foremost, what we should have done when the COVID was announced in China, that was December, and we knew that it was going to go global, we needed to put in preventive measures. Okay?
Which could have been?
First and foremost, close the borders.
Right.
For movement of people.
Right.
And then locally here, we should have quickly done, some testing, to see whether we had, the COVID, the virus already. Okay? Now we failed. We allowed the airport to be open. People were coming in. Okay? Up to now, the airport is still open. We're not putting in place measures that we protect our citizens. And because of our carelessness, we infected a lot of our citizens and we led, them to die because we're not ready. Okay? Our biggest problem is not basically the viruses that we fight against. The COVID-19, the HIV, the malaria parasite. Is that as a country, we don't have a national nutritional standard. Now, food is the first line of medicine. And these diseases we are discussing today, they are all immuno-based. If your immunity is low, they'll knock you out completely, quickly. Now, because of the poverty levels, the hunger levels in the country, if you go to the hospital, 90% of the diseases that are presented at hospital are hunger-related. Now, when you've been hungry for a very long time, it does not only lower your immunity, okay? Hunger has the capacity to draw your brain from your head into the stomach, and the stomach begins to think for you. So, let us address the national nutritional standard first. Now, once we are able to raise the nutrition of the country, health will not be a bigger problem. These opportunistic infections like COVID, we can be able to deal with them, strategically.
Right.
The other thing we must know is that when our health increases, our health standard increases, it means that the life expectancy of the nation will also be increased. With increased life expectancy, then there will be less, deaths. Are you with me? Now, when there's less death in the population, it means that the cost of training of citizens becomes less, because you don't have to replace human capital overnight. You build institutional memory. Our biggest problem currently, even for the private, not only government alone, is that you employ somebody today, tomorrow he's dead, you have to employ somebody else. The other day he's sick, he's in hospital, you have to employ somebody else. So institutional memory is being wiped out. And hence, that's the reason why most of the decisions we're making in this country are emotional. Because we're not relating to yesterday. There's no connection between what we're doing today to the standard set yesterday. So let us first address the national nutritional standard. It will give us the state of national health and increase life expectancy. And with increased life expectancy, it means that there will be stability, not only in human capital development, but even in the economy itself.
Right. Let's address one important aspect. I know that we can't address all of them, but I will pick out some of the critical areas. And just like you've mentioned, I want to agree somehow with you when you say, as a country, we seem to be doing one and the same things over and over.
And you know what is that called? It's lunacy. The ability to repeat the same mistakes and expect a different outcome.
Right. Yeah. So I'm trying to drive my question to the aspect and the plight of our retirees in this country. You know, I, for one, I think I've covered these people for the entire life of my, practice in the media. Each year we cover these people complaining, wanting to get their monies. And these are people that some of them were retired in maybe 1980s, about some of the 1990s and the likes. Governments have come in, they have gone out, but these people have still not been paid. The question is, what is your anticipations with regards to paying these people? I know that President Hakainde Hichilema has been in the opposition for the last 23 years, and he was able, or the UPN in general, they have been in the opposition for the last 23 years, and I've seen these people complaining, protesting. How best can we address this issue? Should this issue be urgent than all maybe other sectors?
IP, I referred you to the book of Hosea in the Bible about ignorance. And God will not help you if you're ignorant. He says, I will not intervene. I'm not a God for idiots. I'm not a God for fools. Okay?
Yeah.
He says, seek the kingdom first. Seek knowledge first. Seek understanding. Okay? That will give you wisdom. Now, let us go back to yesterday, 1964, when the British were living. They left us with a welfare system. Those who retired, they were paid a lump sum of their savings, their contributions. They were paid everything. Then they were transitioned to Social Security, what you are now calling social cash transfer. Okay? You like changing titles, but not understanding what you're doing. Now, they continued to earn, okay, from Social Security. Now, because this was possible because it was planned. Remember, I've talked about, segmenting you have your plans and segment them, short term, mid term, and long term. Now, the first thing that you do as a country, in order to attain, capacity to look after all your citizens, is that first and foremost, you must account for your population. Demographic management, population management. You segment, you graduate this population 0 to 5 years, 5 to 13, 13 to 21, 21 to 35, 35 to 65 and over 65. It's for your planning purposes. Okay? 0 to 5 for pediatric, goods and services. 5 to 13 for primary education. 13 to 21, secondary education. 21 to 35, tertiary. 35 to 65, employment. Then above 65, social security. That is why you now begin to look at senior citizens, how you look after them. Okay? Now, if you do not have these statistics, you'll be wallowing from one problem to another because you've not prepared yourselves for tomorrow. You do not have confidence, about tomorrow. All your programs, you just use emotions. Okay? The retirement age is related to these activities, the graduation of the population. Because when you reach the age of 21, it is envisaged you'll have finished even tertiary education, you're in your first job. Now, when you get into the first job at 21, you are qualified to a mortgage of 44 years. That's why the mortgage is 44 years. So you add 44 to 21. What does it give you? 65. So you're paying the last check, the installment of your mortgage, and you're retiring and transition to social security. You will not be destitute. Are you with me? Now, here, because we destroyed things during, all these systems were destroyed during the UNEP days.
Yeah.
And because of the death of, of many citizens who had this knowledge, we've lost institutional memory. And now we are punishing those senior citizens, retirees. Because anybody above 65, whether you worked, you didn't work, you're supposed to be on social security.
Sure.
You must be looked after till you die. Why is that important? It's because as long as you get your allowance, you participate in the economy, thereby spurring production. Are you with me? All those retirees who have been removed from the purchasing power means that there is loss of production in the economy. Hence, you cannot create jobs, you cannot create wealth, and you can't industrialize. Because you've removed a segment of the population, from participating in the economy.
Right. Let's hear from Mr. Mukandila. What's your take on the plight of retirees in this country?
Well, President Hakainde, the Republican president, and the UPND, whilst in opposition, promised the Zambian people that they shall pay at least half the NAPSA contributions made by employees at the point of a person retiring. We're expecting that there should be a roadmap created in this budget showing the Zambian people how that shall be done, and also creating a platform, a manner in which that particular payment will be done. We are expectant. It is something which will be very exciting. If it shall be achieved, well, it will be a plus on the government and on the Zambian people, because the Zambian people want to access their money immediately they retire, which would be very great. And we are hoping that the budget will have provided for an allocation for retirees, even those who are currently, we know that there are judgments of the Supreme Court that have to be enforced. There are judgments of the Constitutional Court that have to be enforced. And the Constitutional Courts and the courts have awarded these particular employees their retirement benefits. We are hoping that the new Dawn administration is going to provide finances to ensure that these monies are paid to retirees. Unfortunately, people have been dying even without tasting the fruit of their sweat. And even administrators to their estates have equally been dying, to the extent that we are now creating a dead end in terms of claims that are being made. So we are hoping that, we are very hopeful that tomorrow's budget should be able to provide a roadmap on how these particular employees, former employees, are going to be given their monies. The Zambian people are hopeful.
Before you
all right,
come
just spend a minute. I want to choose another question here.
Listen to this.
Please.
You see, it's when you embark on projects that are wasteful, I'll give you an example. What do you call it? Constituency...
CDF, Constituent Development Fund.
May I call it Corruption Development Fund? Okay? Listen to this. You send 1.6 million kwacha to a constituency. You send money. There is no project. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. You send money as Constituent Development Fund. There is no project. Then when the money arrives, then they start thinking about the project. Are you sure that money will be utilized correctly? Okay? Now, we have embarked on so many of these unproductive and wasteful expenditure to an extent where people even want to kill each other if the CDF has not arrived. But look at what is there on the ground. The past 30 years, we've been sending this CDF every year. Okay? Let's go and do an audit of infrastructure that has been built. Now,
and some of the monies have been abused before.
Of course. Now, the other question we must ask ourselves is that CDF, under what relationship between central government and local government does it fall? Because the relationship between central government and local government is based on 3 grants. Recurrent grant for remuneration of civil servants who are attached to local authorities.
Right.
Capital grants for maintenance, repair of infrastructure, which is ordinary central government but operating under councils, under local authorities. The third one is equalization grant. Now, this equalization grant is a development grant, and it is usually, now you should not know, it is always a mid-term plan. And it must have a segment of 25 lots in 25 years. Now, when you say CDF, under which grant does it fall? Other than just corruption itself.
My follow-up question, gentlemen, is with regard to some of the excuses we hear from, successful government we've seen in this country, where when our mothers, our fathers, grandmothers are complaining over the monies that they worked for, these are retirees I'm talking about, you hear a government official telling you that remember that these are retirees that were left to us, or the burden left to us by the previous administration. Like, for example, the PF during their tenure were saying those retirees were left to them by the MMD regime, and so on and so forth like that. Now the question is, these are people that worked for the government of the Republic of Zambia. Who are these retirees for? Should this be an excuse, really, going forward?
Look, the level of lunacy in this country is unacceptable. Okay? You see, let me give you an example. An example that.
Yeah, just spend a minute. We need to go there.
Do you know the sub-region? The sub-region. We call it SADC.
Yeah.
The SADC region owes Zambia. You go to Minister of Finance, go to UN records, World Bank records. The sub-region owes Zambia in excess of $19 billion.
Right.
Okay? Because of this liberation struggle. The South African states would send their planes to come and bomb here. Now, instead of us asking for reparations, simple as that. Restore us. After every war, there are reparations. Restore us to the state in which we were. You bombed a bridge, can you restore us? You killed our people, can you compensate them? Those are reparations.
Right. Quickly,
Mr. Now, listen to this.
Yeah.
We failed to collect that money. Our children, our grandchildren are now on garbage heaps. But we are saying we don't want to be seen as bad people. We helped the region. They're doing better than you. Go and collect your... Okay? Now, your retirees are dying without being paid. But there is money in the sub-region. Let us go and collect the money, pay our retirees. The other thing is that let's look at the Kariba Dam. The debt for the construction of the Kariba Dam was contracted by Northern Rhodesia government.
Right.
And ultimately, the Zambian government paid the balance of that debt. Southern Rhodesia or Zimbabwe did not contribute a penny. But how come they have a share of the Kariba Dam? Why can't we say the cost was this? Let us share, pay, okay?
Right.
So that our people should not die unnecessarily. Why are we being so careless and callous? Okay? If we're saying we don't have money in the economy, but the sub-region owes us money, let us go and collect.
I hear your passion, President Siwale, with regards to the retirees. Let me just give a minute to Mr. Mukandila. What's your voice really regarding this subject? Very touching subject, actually.
Well, with regards to retirees, it is very sad that we've got judgments that are not being respected by the governments. Preceding governments have not really respected the judgments of the courts fully. At least we saw some efforts by the Patriotic Front to try and pay and settle a bit of some monies. Although that was not enough, and that's the reason why probably we may have been voted out. And I'm actually hopeful that tomorrow's budget should be able to provide a roadmap on how the debt is going to be restructured also. Debt restructuring, very important. We expect, because unfortunately, we've been too folly that we had to destroy $200 million worth of cannabis, which was going to help in paying back of the debt if we had just auctioned the cannabis for medicinal purposes. Well, we are hopeful.
The man again sitting in people's homes.
Well, we are hopeful that very soon we should be able to see some
right.
efforts.
Innocent.
Thank you.
We have to go.
Yeah, just as we're closing. Let me tell you one thing.
Yeah.
Copper, gold, diamond, emeralds, cannabis will never develop Zambia. No matter how much. You see, the British, when they were living in 1964, they had done 56 years of mining.
Right.
As of last year, we also had done 56 years of mining. Have we seen any development that has taken place?
Let's end with that question. Then we come back. We'll come and answer. Thank you so much, President Siwale, for coming to this program, as well as Mr. Celestin Mukandila. Thank you so much.